Hi, my name is Bonita Nathan Sussman, and I'm a volunteer with Kulanu. And today I am sitting with Yakov Zamir, who has just returned from Madagascar, teaching the Jewish community of Madagascar. Yakov, could you please tell me something about the geography and where Madagascar and the community is located?
Yes. Well, first of all, before about a year ago, I thought that Madagascar was the name of a movie, and that's all I knew about Madagascar. And I've found since that this is what a lot of Americans think. It's actually the fourth largest island in the world. It's on the other side of Africa. It's not part of Africa. It's actually independent from Africa, and the population is made up of people from a number of different nationalities and ethnicities. It's quite a remarkable place population-wise, and they speak a language together, 20 dialects of the same language, which is called Malagasy, and there are about 23 million inhabitants of Madagascar.
I hear it's a very beautiful country.
It's very beautiful. There's been a lot of erosion in the last 50 years, and so it needs a lot of help. It needs a lot of tender, loving care from people so that it doesn't lose its natural habitat. But it had 98% of its species were completely unique to the island.
Okay. Please tell me something about the emerging Jewish community in Madagascar.
Sure. Starting about 10 years ago, there were individuals who became really interested in Judaism, principally through churches that were steering towards observing more of the Old Testament. And then gradually, as they became more informed about Judaism, online, they learned a lot of things online. They began to practice more and to study some Hebrew and to practice to observe Shabbat. And then they found each other. And this process of finding each other has been going on gradually for about these 10 years. And just in the past year, a former Christian minister who's become a Jew and one of the community leaders who has been involved in various Messianic congregations decided to join forces, and they have a synagogue together, and they have a wonderful cantor who leads the services in really almost flawless Hebrew.
How often do they meet?
Well, they meet every Shabbat. Actually, as of the beginning of August, a number of the Jewish inhabitants actually are meeting Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for Hebrew classes, which I've been teaching. And then on Friday evening, we started observing Kabbalat Shabbat. And then on Saturday, they have synagogue services. And on Sunday, they have virtually the entire day devoted to kind of Talmud Torah, studying together.
Wow. How many people did you say there are?
Well, like many Jewish communities, you can't judge the size of the community by how many people show up at Shabbat services.
True.
Okay.
Very true, yeah.
When I was very privileged to help them organize their first Rosh Hashanah and gathering, and they had about between 200 and 300 people show up for that.
And they knew how to blow the shofar?
Oh, yes. They had about 6 or 7 shofar blowers, and some of them were very good.
That sounds wonderful. Where do they meet?
Their current synagogue is in somebody's living room, which they've been able to convert into a room only used for Shabbat. But they are going to be losing that space, and they're rather nervous about it at the moment because starting in January, they have to find a new home. The Rosh Hashanah we did in the house that's a little bit out of town, that's owned by the niece of one of the members of the community. And it's a brand new house with a big property and lots of space and a couple of kitchens, and it was tremendous. It was a great place.
Wow. So you mentioned that you were teaching. So tell us what you were teaching, the books you were using.
Well, I'm a convert, and I had to study some Hebrew when I was, taking my classes for conversion, which was back in 1988. And then after that, I lived in Israel for 4.5 years and learned a fair amount of Hebrew when I was there. And so I went there with that background and with a fairly good textbook, and worked with them 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, an hour and a half each session. And my class size fluctuated quite a bit, and there were a lot of people that sort of came in and out, but we covered a lot of ground, and especially we started studying prayers, and we studied the Shema. We started out with the Shema, and but then we also spent quite a bit of time studying the holidays, because when I arrived in early August, I was, entering into the season.
That's early August 2014.
Yes, that's
okay.
Early August 2014. So we were doing the preparations for Rosh Hashanah, and then Rosh Hashanah, and then Yom Kippur, and then Sukkot as well. And so each of those holidays, I had to explain in detail to them what the minhag, what the traditions are, what the laws are. In many cases, I had to ask questions of Rabbi Sussman, Bonita's husband, about how we're supposed to be observing the holidays. So the Jewish community is very, very active and engaging, and asks lots of questions, and wants very much to learn and to grow and to follow all the new advice that they receive.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So they're interested in conversion at this point. Some of them may be ready, or they're looking towards the point where they could officially go through Gior in a traditional manner?
Yes. Well, they're actually very eager to do it now, because what they were wondering for the last year or so is they wanted to know, what is the process that they can become recognized as a Jewish community? And I told them very frankly that there's only one way that you can be recognized as a Jewish community. That's conversion. Because you don't have Jewish mothers. So you may think that you have Jewish roots, but there are a lot of people who think that they have Jewish roots, and that still doesn't qualify. But they're I would say about 200 of them are ready.
Wow, that's
yes.
A big group.
Yes.
So you just mentioned that some feel that they have Jewish roots. Would you like to give us a few lines about their history and how they feel they have Jewish roots?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of naive when it comes to this question, because the only people that I knew of before going to Madagascar who claimed to have discovered the descendants of the 10 lost tribes were Mormons, and I always thought that they were a little bit questionable. It never made that much sense to me, and so I never really looked into their claims and sought to understand whether they were historically based. But then in Madagascar, very quickly, my Jewish friends and my Messianic friends told me their stories, and their stories were full of accounts of how their ancestors came to Madagascar from Israel.
Wow.
And in quite some detail, with maps and all sorts of indicators of why they would think this, based on language similarities and customs and various religious beliefs. And it's been a very interesting journey, and I've kept enough notes to know that there's a major book that needs to be written on the subject.
Wow, 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 wow. So tell me something about what their current needs are. What I know you mentioned that they maybe need some talitot, some talesim, some mezuzot. They need sidurim.
They need tefillin. They need sidurim. Here's an interesting thing. I think that when they looked online at various Jewish communities, the Jewish community that looked most like them, because they have, darker skin than we European descendants. And so they recognized in the Sephardic tradition people who look like them. And so I think largely based on that, once they found a Sephardic Siddur, they've been using that. And they pray pretty much with pronunciation that sounds very similar to the Sephardic Jews that I knew in Israel. And but they only have maybe 4 or 5 Siddurim in the whole community, which means that most of the people are listening to the prayers rather than saying the prayers. This is one of the things I found really impressive about them, is they'll sit through an entire 3-hour service, and most of the people don't have a siddur. They're just listening.
Wow. I know that Kulanu gave you a Torah to bring to Madagascar that was donated to us by Congregation B'nai Kilat Jeshrin in Manhattan. Would you like to tell us something about the Seder Hachnasat HaTorah? Well, what the festivities were around getting the Torah and how it changed the life of that community?
I think that it when I delivered the Torah to 4 gentlemen who met me at my apartment just a few days after I arrived, and then they had a gathering that coming weekend where the whole community came out, and there were probably about 300 people that came, and they had refreshments, and it was a really big event. We took a bunch of photographs. I have some photographs online of some of the people's with the Torah. I know that for them it really made them feel very special to finally have a Torah scroll that was theirs, and it's of course it really motivates them to encourage those members of the congregation of the community who already know a fair amount of Hebrew, so that they'll be able to read the Torah.
There were Messianics, and I know that this is a big controversial topic in the Jewish community about what to do with Messianics who are mixed into these groups. And while I, at one time, was very much against Messianics, knowing their status in America and Europe and how they are funded to actually convert Jews to become Christians, I have learned through my work that Messianics come in different flavors. And it is often the last step before they actually come and give up Christianity and become Jews. So full Jews, as we understand what mainline Judaism understands what Judaism is. So could you please give us a few words on the Messianics in Madagascar? Yes.
Well, after all, I think, speaking halachically, speaking legally, there was one Jewish person amidst all of these people in Madagascar, and that was me, because I've actually been converted, with a Beit Din, So everybody else that I was talking with is on a continuum, and they're on a continuum. Some of them are very Christian, and some of them have more or less abandoned their Christianity, and some are regarding themselves really completely as Jews. But none of them are formally Jews at this point. So it's part of that continuum. There are people who are opposed to the Jewish community because they don't want, they feel that they are already authentic Jews, and they feel that there's this competition, and they don't want the competition. They want to be the only show in town. Frankly, there are some people like that. I didn't meet very many of them because as soon as they knew that there was this foreigner who was coming in and teaching Judaism and teaching Hebrew, they stayed away, for the most part. But also, there are quite a few people who are on the journey to explore Judaism, and some of them are very close to accepting it as fully as possible, but they're maybe not ready to make that step quite yet. I think that they will be ready to make that step soon, though.
So I want to thank you very much. I know on behalf of Kulanu and the worldwide Jewish effort to help emerging, returning, and isolated Jewish populations, I know what you're doing is historic and will change Jewish history, certainly in Madagascar. And I actually think the history of the Jewish people changes by the important work that you're doing and others are doing with these communities. So on behalf of Kulanu and everybody, we want to thank you personally for the absolutely extraordinary job that you have done in teaching and forwarding the emergence of the Jewish people in Madagascar.
Well, and I couldn't have done any of it without Kulanu, because I didn't even know about the existence of this community before.
Okay, thank you very much for speaking with me.